China has warned Kyiv against making, quote, irresponsible remarks after the Ukrainian president accused Beijing of being aware that its citizens were being recruited to fight for Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky releasing earlier this week a video of a man that he alleged was a Chinese national, one of two captured in Donetsk. Mr. Zelensky adding he had details of 155 Chinese citizens deployed to fight for Moscow, with Russia recruiting them via social media. The Ukrainian leader adding that he's looking into whether recruits had also received instructions from Beijing. Moscow dismissing claims that China is being drawn into this conflict, Beijing maintaining it is not a party to the war in Ukraine. Let's go to Will Denslow. He's live from Odessa in Ukraine. Will, President Zelensky presumably would not be leveling accusations at Beijing if he did not have supporting evidence. What might that evidence be?
Well, the message from Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is very clear. He says that they have strong evidence to suggest there are these over 150 Chinese nationals fighting alongside Russian forces on Ukrainian territory. He says, though, that that number is likely very much higher. He adds that investigations are currently underway just to find exactly the extent of it. Now, he hasn't suggested that there is evidence that there is state sponsoring of this, but he says that it is likely that Beijing would be aware that some of its nationals would be fighting alongside the Russians. As you mentioned, that has garnered a strong reaction from Beijing, saying that essentially a very clear message that their direction to citizens is to stay away from any kind of conflict zone. China, of course, has maintained that it is neutral in this conflict. And when it comes to Russia, though, well, the charges are very different indeed. Volodymyr Zelensky says that Russia is using things like social media, things like TikTok, to recruit Chinese nationals. He says that those people that choose to come to Russia are then given a medical evaluation, several days of training before sent to fight in Ukraine. So he says that this is, again, another damning indictment on Moscow's efforts, he says, to prolong the war.
All right, well, earlier we've heard claims from Washington, from NATO, from Kyiv, certainly that North Korea has been sending troops to help Russia in its war in Ukraine. Now, should there be other actors involved in this conflict, potentially China, if there are more actors, how would that affect the resolution of this conflict in Ukraine?
Well, Ukraine's president has been very clear. He says that Russia is seeking really any means to prolong this war, to drag on the fighting. So that is why in a social media address, Volodymyr Zelensky has urged all partners to do what they can to really cut off the means of Russia to do that, to continue fighting. He says that includes nationals from third parties being used to fight. So a strong plea, not just to China, without singling out China in that note, but calling on all partners to do what they can to cut off these avenues that Russia has to continue the fighting. The relationship with Beijing is, of course, incredibly muddied. China in the past has pledged its strong support and strong partnership with Russia whilst maintaining that stance of neutrality. Of course, there are real concerns here in Ukraine about the use of dual-use goods and weaponry that can be, or dual-use weapons that can be used from China to Russia. That is a huge concern from Kyiv. And of course, the message we've heard time and time again from Ukraine's president is for nations around the world to stay steadfast and do more to isolate Moscow.
Thanks for that. Will Denslow there speaking to us live from Odessa in Ukraine.